Here we go. Hey, everybody, good morning. And I am Nancy Becher, the president and founder of Invisible Warriors. Welcome to Silent Strength with Invisible Warriors, a podcast dedicated to honoring the extraordinary women veterans who have faced profound challenges of PTSD and military sexual trauma. Our journey began with a simple yet powerful mission to give voice to those whose strength often goes unseen. We believe in the power of stories to heal, connect, and transform. This podcast is a space where women veterans can share their experiences, offering hope and solidarity to others navigating similar paths. Each episode delves into the unique and personal stories of courageous women, highlighting their resilience in the battles they continue to fight long after their service has ended. We bring in expert voices to provide insights and strategies, creating a deeper understanding of the complexities these veterans face. Silent Strength is more than just a podcast. It's a community where listeners can find support and inspiration. For veterans adjusting to life after service, or for those who wish to stand with them, our podcast is an invitation to listen, learn, and grow together. We're committed to breaking the silence surrounding PTS and military sexual trauma, creating a platform where these critical conversations can thrive. It's about acknowledging the unseen scars and celebrating the strength it takes to overcome them. Today, we are honored to have a guest who will share their personal journey, shedding light on the challenges and triumphs they've encountered. Their story is a testament to the resilience and courage that define our community. Join us in this vital dialogue and discover the power of shared experiences. Together, we can build a network of understanding and support, ensuring that no veteran feels alone on their journey. Welcome, Amanda Lee, to Silent Strength. We're glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing your story. And I know you've got some very, very important things to share. And so I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you tell us what you're here to do today.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again for having me. I am not a veteran. I've never served. I have the utmost respect for those of you who do. But I unfortunately do have shared experience in trauma and PTSD. I am a domestic violence survivor and a mother, and I am here to talk to you about how I, and we were talking before we started recording, I don't want to say overcame trauma because I don't think you ever overcome it. It's something that's always with you, but how I almost continue to function daily when I have a massive amount of trauma. My story begins in an abusive marriage and culminates on the night of August 3rd, 2019 at 8:59 p.m. I will never forget that moment because that is the moment my ex-husband threatened to kill me and our children and burn our house down and went as far as got a gas can and a lighter. And I had to pull my 5 and 3-year-old out of their beds and run for our lives to our neighbor's house. And through that, I feel like when you experience trauma, the immediate, it's almost like you put up a wall. It's like, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm going to focus on everybody else. I'm going to focus on everyone else. And that's what I did. As a parent, and those of you who are parents will understand, if you have a shared trauma with your children, your focus is on your kids. You want to make sure they're okay. So I did everything and anything I could think of to help support my children. I immediately enrolled them in therapy. I enrolled them in a trauma-based play therapy with a therapist who I found who was fabulous. I I got them 2 cats because I thought maybe having animals would help. I remembered that I'm not a cat person, probably within an hour of having them in my home, but the bond was already there, so we're stuck with them probably for the next 20 years. um, I tried to keep their daily lives as much together as possible, and I kept trying to convince myself I was fine. There was nothing, like I was fine. I don't need anything. I'm focusing on my kids, and I wasn't fine. I completely neglected my own self-care. And I started to see things in myself that I didn't like. I started to get very irritable. I was snapping, I was yelling, and that wasn't normally me. And then an odd thing happened to me one night. I was out with friends and I was drinking a dirty martini, and I probably hadn't had a dirty martini. It's not really like my drink. I hadn't had one probably since I was married to my ex-husband. And that night I got home and I had ringing in my ears and I started to shake and I felt like I was going to throw up. And then all of a sudden I felt like someone was sitting on my chest and I couldn't catch my breath. And I mentioned it. I calmed myself down. And for the life of me, because I was in the moment panicking, I can't tell you how I did it. I have no idea. The next day, my children had therapy and I mentioned it to their therapist. And she was like, "You had a PTSD episode. You have PTSD. Amanda, I know you think you're okay. You're not okay. You need to get some help." And she was right. And once it kind of clicked that no, I'm really not okay. Because I feel like also when you experience trauma, whether it's domestic violence, any type of violence, sexual assault, you kind of try to disassociate. Like, I know for me, I was like, well, maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Well, maybe, you try to disassociate and it's a coping mechanism. But once like a professional pointed out, like, actually, you're not okay. Like, here is this pamphlet on PTSD and here are the signs. And I was looking at it and I was like, I have PTSD. I experienced a major trauma. And it took me a minute. And then I dived in. I was like, what can I do to make myself okay? And I did everything and anything anyone suggested. I got into yoga and I'm from Philadelphia. And my people, we don't meditate or do yoga. Like that is not what we do. But I do. I still to this day, almost every night I meditate. I got into meditation. I did yoga. I saw an energy healer, which my friends were like, "You're going where?" I'm like, "I'm gonna go get my energy healed. I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna do it." And I saw her maybe 5 times, and it was one of honestly the most powerful things I did. It was it was incredibly healing. And then I found a creative outlet. I had all of this almost nervous energy. And what I understand from talking to other people who have experienced trauma is that is not uncommon. It's especially if you have an abuser that is continuing to do it. Once you've released that, you have this stored up energy because you've been in such a fight or flight moment for so long and I didn't know what to do with it. And I kept being told by professionals, by people that I love, that I needed to find a creative outlet. And I have always deemed myself uncreative. I draw stick people. I can't sew. I can't paint. I have always wanted to be that person who journals in those beautiful journals that you find in Barnes and Noble, and you can sit under a tree like you're in a Jane Austen movie novel, and that is just not me. So I was like, I felt like I needed to do something with my hands. So I taught myself how to knit, and I can knit a mean scarf now, but it wasn't enough. I needed a way to continuously to get this out. And that's where I found my passion for writing. I couldn't sleep one night, which is often, the case with anyone who's experienced any major life event. And I started to think about, well, if I wrote what has happened to me, what would those chapters look like? What would I name them? What would I write in them? And the next day it just kind of poured out of me and it was so cathartic. I wrote and I released. I wrote a chapter and I released it. And it was so incredibly healing. And that creative outlet is not something that I realized was so needed in order to deal with the trauma that I was experiencing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And in fact, just before we jumped on here, I was in the middle of a meeting setting up an MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding,
Mhm.
government terminology kind of thing, that all of my military women will understand, with an organization that works with women vets doing yoga,
Mhm.
because that is something that a lot of women that have been in these kinds of situations find helpful and supportive. We're also going to be doing art projects, and we have a retreat coming up where we're going to provide journals for the women, because that is another, area that, and we're all different. So
Yeah,
you can't just say we're going to do yoga and you're going to be 100% cured. You
right.
can't do that. But
Hmm.
if you can find a series of different ways to have an outlet for your emotions,
Hmm.
I think that really, really, really is helpful.
I agree. And I think if you're open to trying things, like once you realize like I do need help dealing with this trauma that I experienced, if you're if you can be open to the things that people suggest. Like I said, like I mean I've done yoga like at the gym and like periodically, but I was never one that was super into it. And the idea of sitting and meditating, I'm like, no, no, that's not me. I'm not, And then when someone suggested an energy healer, I'm like, what? I'm sorry, she's gonna do rub her hands above my body and I'm gonna be like cured? Like what? And then she's gonna play like these sound baths and it's all gonna be good. But I at that point I was like, you know what? You suggested it. It worked for someone else. Let me see. Let me see if it'll work for me.
Yeah. I can remember years ago now, when I was married to my first husband. um I knew things weren't right, but it hadn't really sunk in that I wasn't happy, that I needed something different.
Mhm.
And I had been in my car accident, and I was going to a chiropractor, and they had me going to massage therapy. And I went into this therapist for my appointment, and it wasn't somebody I normally saw. And she says, "Well, I'm not doing massage today. I'm doing Reiki." I walked out of there, ball in my eye. This woman never touched me. And
Right?
I'm bawling my eyes out. Went home, looked at my husband, and said, "I want a divorce."
I mean, it's really, if you find someone who is good, it is incredible. Like, I remember the first time I was like, okay, but it was like the second or third time our session. And I just remember being like, it took so much out of me. It took me days to recover. But after those days, I was like, that was amazing. Oh my gosh, I feel so good.
Yeah, yeah, I know the one I won't ever do again, and that's oh, I can't think what it's called. Reflexology.
Okay.
I have bad feet, and I tried that one time, and this woman's touching my toes, and I kicked her and fell off the bed. I said, "Nope, that one's not for me. I'll move on to the next thing." It was really funny. So, guys, when you're hearing us talk about things, I think Amanda's right. Be open to something. Doesn't mean everything's going to work. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean you can go into something and say, "I'm going to give this one try and I'm going to walk out totally cured."
Mhm.
That,
But I think there are like specific components, especially with dealing with trauma, that like it's a formula that does work. Like you need first something or someone to help you process what has happened. And then you need a way to help get some of that pent up emotion and energy out, whatever that looks like. And then you need, so what do I do when these symptoms happen? Because they do happen. I mean, I still do have PTSD and I still have things that happen and I'm okay and I can work through it because I have the tools to know when it's happening. So, a lot of times for me, it manifests in a panic attack.
Yeah.
And there are times I have a full-blown panic attack. I haven't caught it. I'm too tired. I'm emotional. I can't handle it. But there are other times where I can feel it coming on and I know what I need to do. You know, my therapist told me I need to change the environment. I need to shock the senses. So it's drinking ice cold water. It's walking outside no matter what the temperature is and feeling the ground under your bare feet. It's things like that. And that really helps me. But I think that formula, the three-part formula of helping process, finding a way to get the excess feelings and energies out of your body, and then having those tools for what do I do when it crops up again?
Yeah, I think, and I think that actually is probably the number one most important thing that anyone who is dealing with some sort of trauma has to do first, and that's acknowledge the fact that something is going on
Mm-hmm.
and that you do need help.
Mm-hmm.
So many of the women I talk to are like what you said. Oh, it's not a big deal. It's in the past. I've
Mm-hmm.
passed it. I can handle this. I'm a strong woman.
Yeah.
And that's not going to help. I've heard too many stories about years go by after a situation and the woman has put it aside for, some of these women 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And, they were Vietnam veterans, nurses in Vietnam, and they've not dealt with it. And they'll just have this total and complete breakdown.
Yeah.
And if they had allowed themselves to accept that something was going on and that they needed to talk to someone, even if it's just talking to someone else,
Mm-hmm.
that things would be better.
Yeah. And I think it's also, I mean, we say it like this, but it's a hard concept, especially
Mhm.
as a trauma victim, to acknowledge that this awful thing really did happen to me. And there's shame, there's embarrassment, and until we can in our minds flip the narrative that the shame and embarrassment is not with us, the victims, it's with the abuser. The
Mhm.
shame and embarrassment should be with them that they treated another human being the way that they treated, regardless of what type of abuse it was. Um, but I mean, there is. I was doing an interview several years ago, and the interviewer just kept asking me, "All right, so why did you stay?" Okay, but why did you stay? But why did you stay? And I finally looked at him and was like, "Listen, buddy, I stayed for many reasons, but I shouldn't feel like I'm under attack because I stayed in a violent situation. You know, if you haven't experienced trauma like that, you shouldn't be putting that on me." So I think until you can internalize and flip the script.
Mhm.
And it makes it a lot easier to be like, that the person who did this to me, that is the person who should feel the shame and embarrassment. And yeah, I survived this. And surviving trauma, you're as my teenagers would say, you're a baddie. You're you're the one who is the warrior, but even warriors need help sometimes.
Right. So I guess my question is, because it's one of the things I run into constantly. We have a monthly in-person meetup group for women veterans to just come and be in community with others where they can
Hmm.
feel, like they're not alone. I can't get them to come. I have women who have not been out of their home in 2 years
Yeah.
because of exactly what you're saying. So, how do we, as supporters of these women, or how do the women themselves get to the point where they allow themselves to flip the script,
Yeah.
and say, I'm ready for help.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, I don't know. Um, for me, it was the feeling of not feeling alone. Um, once I had to start telling people what happened, I people that I've known for years and years were like, "Oh yeah, that happened to me.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, that happened to me. Oh yeah. Oh, you should talk to this person that, oh my gosh, let me tell you what happened to her." And it was like, why aren't we supporting you? Like, why is this like the big secret that no one's talking about? I had no idea all these people in my life had experienced some form of abuse.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's honestly what pushed me to publish my work, is because I want to be there for other victims. I don't want them to feel like they're alone. I want them to see that they're not alone, but not that they're just not alone, that there's light at the end of the tunnel, that
Yeah.
you can be okay. And I think for the flipping of the script, I think that really depends on the individual. I mean, the people that show up for you, and knowing that, unfortunately, you are not the only one who has experienced this type of trauma.
Yeah.
There are millions and millions of people who have, and unfortunately, there's probably many, many people who experienced it worse than you too. You're not alone.
Yeah. And I think probably, hopefully, one of the things that I'm trying to accomplish is programs like this,
Mhm.
programs like the meetups where we just do it over and over and over again, and we let everybody we can know that those spaces are there and open and available to them. And eventually they'll say, well, let me give it a try.
Yeah,
Let me just see
absolutely.
what this
Hmm.
is,
Hmm.
and once they come to something, once they start listening to the podcasts, once they realize that they're not there all by themselves and that they've got a support community around them, then they can start to heal.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your books.
So my first one is, like I said, my memoir. It's called One of the Lucky Ones. And it is about how I got into an abusive marriage and how I got out. And like I said, it really was just kind of a therapy writing for me. I wasn't going to do anything with it. Kind of thought it was crap. Didn't never envision myself as a writer. But I let one person read it, and they were like, "This is really good. You could help people with this." And that's all it took. And then because it was such almost like a magical experience writing it, I started to think about, well, what else could I write? And one of the things that I struggled with supporting my children is how to support them, all the different ways how to support them. And we struggled particularly at night at bedtime. And that's when we would have our conversations. And I was desperately looking for a children's book that dealt with reassuring a child after trauma, but wasn't too specific. And I couldn't find what I was looking for, what I had in my mind. So I wrote it. My children's book's called Always, and it really stems from the reassurance of how I provided the reassurance to my children during those bedtime moments. Like I said, my kids were little when this happened. They were 5 and 3. Um, so all they really saw was daddy was really mad, and is this really going to happen? And are you going to always protect me? And are we safe? And I wanted not just my voice reassuring them, but like, look, like, let's look at this book. Let's read our book. Let's have something tangible. And then I have a fiction book series that follows a female detective, a female domestic violence detective, as she solves different cases. And the second book in the series just came out this past June.
How exciting is
Thank
that?
you.
That's really neat. I
Thank
keep
you.
saying I gotta write a book, and it just never gets done.
When the first person said you should write a book, I laughed in their face. I'm like, have you lost your mind? Like, first of all, when am I ever going to have time to do this? And also, like, I hate writing. I just kept thinking of papers in college and in grad school, and I'm like, why would I willingly do this? But it has been such like a passion and such such a great release. Even now, like I find such like a creative output when I write, um, that, I would have never, if someone would have told me 10 years ago that I'd write 5 books, I'd be like, okay, sure.
I'll believe that sometime.
Yeah, right.
I get it. I get it. If you had one thing that was urgent and you needed to share with the world around you, what would that be?
You know, I always go back to my piece of advice for any type of victim who is being victimized by somebody they're in a relationship with, whether it's sexual or domestic violence or, a sibling or parent, is that no one ever regrets leaving. No one ever regrets leaving. Whatever trauma you're experiencing in a partnership, no one ever regrets leaving. You never hear anyone being like, I wish I would have stayed with this abuser longer. No one ever regrets leaving.
That's really good. It's just getting, I think, getting to the point of getting to that point
Yeah.
where, where you say, all right, I can't, it's, I guess, what's the saying where you have to hit rock bottom before
Mhm.
you come up? And I guess it's the, can't take this anymore. I've got to do something. And
Yeah.
once you make that decision and you're out of it, then I agree
Yeah.
with you that
Yeah.
you
Well, it's
feel finished.
recognizing it too. I mean, I think often with trauma, especially in partnerships, you kind of go into the just like survival mode and you can't conceptualize what is actually happening to you. Like I know for me, like I couldn't put words to what was happening. And I think that was fear because if I did, I would have to realize that I was in an abusive relationship.
And you don't want to acknowledge even to yourself, I don't think
Yeah.
that you've allowed, because it really, it is something that you allow, I think.
Mhm.
You can say no, but you don't for whatever reason, and you continue to let it happen until you don't any longer.
Mhm.
And I think that's the point you need to get to is just, look, I'm strong enough that I can deal with this, and I'm not going to let them do this to me any longer.
Yeah, I agree.
So, well, I know that you have other things you need to do today, and this has been a wonderful, heavy bit of conversation, but also um, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You've seen it, you've shown it, you've let other people know that it does exist and that they need to just believe in it. So I thank you very much for all of that. And thank you all for listening. And you have been listening to a new edition of Silent Strength. And if you haven't already, please give us a quick review and rating on iTunes. And don't forget, you can follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube. To wrap things up, often after a podcast, people want to know more about some of the things we do at Invisible Warriors. And if you'd like to hop on a Zoom, my contact information will be in the show notes. And thank you again for tuning in today and listening to today's conversation. We will see you again soon. Take care, all. Bye bye.